Benjamin Castle are Americans. Watching the footy.
Liam Ryan saying, kick it my way, I want to jump over the pack, and here he comes! Ryan!
This is Buddy Franklin! This is the greatest showman!
Got the handball off to Myers. Myers looking for the lead of Stengel. Gee, they're good. Gee, they're sharp. Razzle dazzle Rioli.
Oh, who else? McDonald! Around the body. Jazz up!
He's off from inside the centre square. Boys kick the goal. Boys kick the goal from inside the centre. Fuck! I can't believe it.
And a good time of day to you all. This is episode 238 of Americans Watching the Footy. I am Benjamin Castle, coming to you from San Diego, California, where I am done with my spring semester, much to my relief.
I'm Ethan Castle, coming to you from South San Francisco, California. And if we're coming to you a little bit later than usual, that's because we've been busy the last few days. I had to go to San Diego. He had a graduation. This guy thinks he's doing the next, Paulo fucking Freire or something.
Yeah, it was very strange. Family came down to watch me get a piece of paper that isn't actually the piece of paper I'm getting, and celebrate my finishing of a program that I haven't actually finished yet, because summer term. But everybody walks at the end of the spring semester here anyway.
We've been catching up on games. I was too exhausted to watch much Saturday night, aka Sunday. So I've done some catching up. At least one of us has at least watched every game.
Which is our goal for every round.
Yeah, I mean, in the next few days, we'll both have watched. But for now, one of us can at least bring you analysis of each game, which will start. Do we want to just start right away, or do I make announcements, or what are we doing here?
Is there
News, everyone!
that you think should have us circumvent our usual proceedings?
I think so.
RIP Coalition?
No, that I have locked in dates for my first visit to Australia, and hopefully see a bunch of you guys at various stadiums, or if not at stadiums, just around in various cities. Would love to meet up with as many people as possible, whether that's at a game, at a restaurant, before or after, whatever it may be. So the plans in all, 3 weeks, 12 games, 6 stadiums, 16 of the 18 teams. It's going to be rounds 20 through 22. I'll post more stuff on Twitter in the coming days to let people know which games, but to give a brief rundown, I'll be primarily around Melbourne, obviously, but also with brief cameos in Sydney, Adelaide, and Perth. Get things started with the round 20 Thursday nighter between Hawthorn and Carlton, then up to Sydney for Sydney Derby, then to Adelaide for Showdown, spend the next couple of days in Adelaide, get back into Melbourne, Thursday nighter at Marvel between the Dogs and Giants, probably take the train down to Geelong Friday and basically take up residence there for a few days, although I will be coming back into Melbourne Saturday for a doubleheader, which will be the rare D's home game at Marvel, that against the Eagles, followed by Collingwood Brisbane at the G. Sunday afternoon, Cats host Port. Couple days after that, gonna do the Great Ocean Road, stay a night in Warrnambool, then back into Melbourne. We've got a Thursday nighter between the Hawks and Pies that kicks off round 22, then back down to Geelong for a Friday night against Essendon. Another Saturday doubleheader, this time it's Richmond and St Kilda at the G, followed by Carlton and Gold Coast at Marvel. And then Sunday morning, fly out to Perth, see the Eagles host the Crows, spend a day in Perth, and then eventually make my way home. So if you plan on being in any of those places or at any of those games, drop me a line. Would love to link up. Or if you're not going to be around and have some restaurants or bars or other things that you think I should check out, please do let me know, because I'm really looking forward to this.
So it's going to be rounds 20 through 22. I know you were initially looking at a bit of an earlier block, but when the fixturing came out the way it did, obviously you made a bit of a shift in your plans. This will all, be still well ahead of the high school football season, which is the most important thing for Ethan, in addition to making this first footy pilgrimage. It's unfortunate that I can't join you on this one because that'll be right near the end of my master's program and potentially me starting another job, getting my classroom set up and all, but I hope to make my first pilgrimage in a couple years once I've got something stable. We will definitely pin Ethan's itinerary on both Instagram and Twitter, so take a look for that there at Americans Footy.
So I had been looking at round 17 through 19 possibly, or 19 through 21, but with the allocation of Thursday and Friday games and knocking off various things off the list that I really wanted to do, this made the most sense. I'm going to get to a game at Optus, I'm going to get to Showdown, I'm going to get 2 Geelong home games.
The only thing you really won't do is Queensland. And which 2 clubs are you missing out on? You told me before.
Missing out on North and Freo, and yeah, I would have loved to do a game at the Gabba and or People First, considering how much of a role those 2 stadiums played in the 2020 season. And probably not going to be able to do the audience for an episode of Bounce. Was hoping to do like a Sunday game at the G or at Marble, but the Sunday games I'm going to be seeing are in Geelong and Perth, so that seems unlikely. I mean, I could have, in theory, come right back from Adelaide and then caught another game on Sunday in round 20, but want to actually spend a couple days in Adelaide for sure. So this is the most logical way to do that.
Got some people you can see there, got the Dolphin Sanctuary. And also, I mean, you're going to Showdown, you're also going to a Sydney Derby, you're getting your rivalry fix.
Yeah, I still will complain the way they set up that round 20 with 3 of the big rivalries and of course Geelong's game all on Saturday and none on Sunday.
Also, that's the round that they totally botched in terms of scheduling so much in Victoria when the Lions match at the G, as in the British and Irish Lions, had been set for 2 years.
Yeah, they could have probably used a little more foresight on that and made it around with 1 or no games at the G.
Yeah, that would have been like a great national round or something.
Which could kind of help offset like this week, this coming round, round 11, which is like, oops, all Victoria.
At round 11, we're going to have
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
seven Victorian games.
This past round was pretty well spread out, kicked off in Darwin. I love it when a hyped up game delivers on the anticipation, and this one definitely did. Gold Coast 16-8-104, defeating Hawthorn 15-6-96.
The mighty Sun.
The Suns remain undefeated in their Darwin tenancy. It's their second time defeating Hawthorn up there. I mean, both the games up there delivered this year. And
They win the battle of the umpires' 2 favorite teams, which even I can admit, at least in the first quarter, the Suns were getting a few their way that were pretty bad. But you also had like Nick Watson selling for a free kick in like the first minute. He had a couple of really shameless ones, but the umpiring, it was pretty bad in the first half, and then it just kind of faded and became less of a story because this was a really fun game where Noah Anderson was simply outstanding. Some games he just wraps up volume. This game, his possessions mattered.
I mean, you look at the numbers that Anderson gets, and yeah, they're big. 865 meters definitely stands out, though that isn't the greatest distance gained by somebody in this game.
It's also, Darwin is a stadium that, because it's just such a long ground, tends to lend itself to bigger numbers for that. And this was an up and down game where both teams managed to keep their stamina up a lot better than you would have expected.
Yeah, despite the heat policy as well. Yes, Anderson was incredible. 6 setter clearances out of his 12 total, so it wasn't just Rowland there. Probably the best center clearance game I've seen Anderson have overall. A goal with 3 assists from his 35. If you're talking about distance gained, though, we had our first kilometer game this year, and it was John Noble getting a meter over 1,000. And 13 turnovers.
I didn't think a lot of his turnovers were that bad. I didn't think he was great. What stood out to me in this game, though, was this was a pretty full team effort from the Suns. Like, you had the usual suspects, Tuke Miller, Matt Rowell. This was also, I believe, game number 200 for Tuke Miller, and he had a couple of goals. He was really sharp. I think I said this just a week ago describing the game against the Bulldogs, but he makes his impact so quickly. He's kind of a blink and you'll miss it player. where like he'll get his clearances and then you'll look back like, wait, who did that? Oh, that was Miller, of course. He operates very quickly.
And also, he's going to get less attention compared to Rowell and Anderson. You've also got him playing in a different role this year with more of an assignment sometimes forward of center and being more aggressive as a goal kicker when that really was never a priority of his ahead of this year. So I like that shift from Damian Hardwick because he's always a clean mover of the ball. You don't ever see complaints about him in terms of turnovers or anything like that.
A few guys kind of operated in different roles than usual, something I really enjoyed, whether that be Will Powell racking up half of his possessions contested, Sam Flanders only getting 13 disposals when he was such a big volume guy in the past, but turning that into 7 score involvements, Ben Long making himself useful once again, Nick Holman getting a bunch of contested possessions, Sam Collins with one of his best defensive games probably in his entire career, 11 intercepts, 10 marks, 9 spoils, 6 intercept marks out of 15 disposals. That's a pretty ridiculous showing, and he was one who got better as the game went on. And it made up for a down game for one of our favorites in Mac Andrew. I thought on Hawthorne's side, like, look, they are
Free kick merchants.
Oh, they are. Their free kick margin is double that of number 2.
They haven't lost a free kick count this year. And I know you don't look at the raw numbers as much, whatever. It's still ridiculous. And when Hawthorne wins the flag within these next couple of years, there's going to be some appropriate Free Kick Hawks discussion. Gonna follow this team when they win the flag like Free Kick Bulldogs has. Remember, I had Hawthorne defeating Geelong as my grand final pick before the season.
It's unfortunate that between suspension and injuries, you didn't get the full experience of Rowell, Miller, Anderson versus Newcomb, Day, Nash. If you just have one of those 2 missing players to go alongside Newcomb and Warple, I think it's a bit of a different dynamic. But what impressed me from Hawthorne, I think they did a lot less to lose this game, and Gold Coast did a lot more to win it. Like, you got a good game out of Josh Ward. Josh Weddle impresses me every week because he's flying around in so many different roles. The forwards pretty much all collectively played pretty well when they weren't selling out for free kicks. Jack Donovan actually got one that he ducked into, but he sold it really well and kind of disguised it, which was really the only notable thing he's done. Other than that, he's just been an uncontroversial football player, which is so weird. Mabior Chol with another 3-goal game, Nick Watson with 3, Blake Hardwick played forward and kicked 3, and they hung around in this thing even when the Suns won clearances by 15.
Expected score, looking at the great AFLX score, was in favor of Hawthorne by a little over 10 points. Do you kind of agree with that? Did it feel like Hawthorne left too much on the board?
No, I just think both teams hit some tough shots, and ultimately the Suns got more rewards for having the better midfield performance. Also, really fun atmosphere at this game, was over 12,000. It didn't feel as overwhelmingly a Hawthorne crowd. There were definitely more Hawks fans, but it wasn't as noticeable as it was with the Bulldogs fans really dominating a week ago.
It is the largest crowd that the Suns have had there. Remember, they didn't even have 10,000 on the Saturday against the Dogs. And this is the biggest crowd that they've had at TIO Stadium since 2006 for an AFL game. That's what happens when A, you put a good game up there, and B, you keep building things well as the Suns have. I mean, how many Northern Territory guys did they have on their team for this game? I believe it was 4 again, with Joel Jeffrey, Ben Long, Dan Rioli, and Mal Rosas, who did get a goal unlike the week prior. And Long, of course, with his 4-1 and a couple excellent marks as well.
It's been
From Darwin on Thursday, we went to Sydney for the Marlborough game on Friday, and the Swans kept up their great record in that Marlborough game, which is traditionally against the Blues, I believe. This was my gauntlet pick, and I'm still in it. Sydney 11-12-78, defeating Carlton 9-8-62. Tight contest much of the way, and then the Swans were able to stretch things out with a 5-2 fourth quarter, and it was 10-4. Actually trailed by 5 at 3-quarter time, but but I was still confident enough.
This was not anywhere near as skillful or as exciting a game as the night before, but we had a couple of really strong individual performances. Isaac Heaney, if he kicks straighter, has one of the best games of the year. He ended up winning the Goods O'Loughlin medal. 2-5, 38 disposals, 10 score involvements, and 9 clearances. Flip that to 5-2 when you're talking about like one of the best performances ever. Chad Warner, 2 goals, 30 disposals, 9 score involvements, 2 assists, 630 meters gained. And I just thought some of the guys that have kind of been secondary contributors for the Swans really did step up. This was one of the most impactful games I've seen out of Jake Lloyd, who I think at times is just kind of a volume guy.
I think he's a guy who's often taken for granted, and I did also think he would have a bigger role on the outside as the Swans are still, shorthanded without Errol Golden, for example. But yeah, definitely a more impactful and effective game for him. 23 and 8 marks. Was also very happy to see Angus Sheldrick get a full game this time around. And even though he didn't kick a goal, still impactful with his 7 tackles and 7 inside 50s from 21. That made me feel validated in some respects, although the more time he gets, the less likely he is to want to come back home to the West.
Both him and Braden Campbell were really solid. I was surprised that the Swans dropped Hayden McLean. They also moved Ollie Florent down to the sub role, and he was great in that role after what's been a really lousy majority of the season. I thought maybe without Errol Golden, there was a chance for him to step up, and he has not thrived at all, but he looked really good in the sub role, so maybe there's something to build off of there. This was kind of wet weather footy, even though it didn't rain during the game. It had rained throughout the week, and it definitely played a factor. Dean Cox had one really dumb move that ended up not really hurting as much as it could have. Harry Mackay started out strong because Aaron Francis, who had been so good as a forward, and then kind of come back to earth as a forward, but had definitely been a better forward than defender, got moved into defense and was getting his ass kicked. And then he got concussed, so that problem, in an unfortunate way, solved itself.
I mean, you've got McCartan obviously on Curnow there. I mean, I guess Dane Rampy would be the pick otherwise, but Rampy's been getting some small to mid-size assignments instead. Like he's gotten Toby Green during the Derby the past few times. I guess Rampy would have been the pick, though.
I'd rather just throw Joel Hamling back than go to Francis there.
Well, the forward situation gets more complicated because of Francis's concussion and also Joel Amarty's suspension. Welcome back, now leave again. 3 games for a high bump of Jordan Boyd, and that is one of 2 suspensions for the Swans out of this game, out of the same play. Shit, you're right, because Justin McInerney also got dinged on that same play for a game, and he'd been pretty strong otherwise.
But yeah, Sydney's tall stocks are now, I don't know what they're going to do, but if Brody Grundy plays like he did down the stretch, that would also make things a lot easier.
And Pete Laddams was already in, too.
I mean, Hayden McLean coming back in seems like the first and most obvious solution.
Yeah, it was very strange to see him dropped in the first place, so hopefully he'll be back straight away. He did play in the 2s, 2 behinds from 8 disposals there against Carlton. So we've talked a lot of positives for the Swans and the weirdness as well. For the Blues, typically difficult matchup, stays that way because of another late collapse. What we say worked for this game? There were some big totals. Adam Chera, I saw, had perhaps his most active and best game of the year, especially with his midfield play. Because you see him more on the outside and flanking, but it looks like he actually got some inside responsibility.
Yeah, I didn't think he was great on a per-touch basis. He definitely had a lot of touches, though. I think it was, 34 of them?
And 20 of them contested.
Yeah, but I actually thought their best players were probably some mix of Charlie Curnow, Patrick Cripps, or Cooper Lord. Like, Chera was mostly just right at the source. But, collectively, this was a team that faded as the game went on, other than a few individuals. Mark Pitton had started off on fire with Tom DeConing out because of a knock to the throat the other day in training. He faded. Same with Mitch McGovern. First half, Mitch McGovern was moving the ball from a center halfback spot really efficiently. Harry Mackay had some accuracy issues as the game went on. Started off great, didn't finish great. as a whole with Carlton, this is one of those games that, like, by itself is a lot less frustrating. When you have it against the backdrop of some of the other losses, this one really eats away at you. If you had held on and taken care of business in a couple of those earlier games, you would just be able to say, yeah, we always struggle up there. This is a bad matchup. It's what it is. But that, you already burned so much of that margin for error that this is tough to contend with.
I would say that these next games are winnable for the Blues, but at this point, what do we know? Hosting the Giants next Saturday, then round 12 bye before the Kings Eve game. That's going to be a big Sunday nighter.
Yeah, I like them to win both games on either side of the bye.
I mean, I would currently have them likely to win 4 in a row because then they've got the Eagles, yes, in Perth, but the Eagles and North. What a gift that they get to play West Coast and North twice. And their percentage isn't terrible either. They're almost in 107.
That comes off of, they haven't had too many lopsided losses. They've lost close games and they beat up the Eagles and North.
And they'll have a chance to do that all again. Yay! Collingwood 11-12-78, defeating Adelaide 10-8-68 in front of 67,697. Never before have more people seen the Crows in a home and away game. Guess what? It happened again.
This one's got to be a different type of frustrating for the Crows than some of their past close losses to Collingwood, because I think when you look at a game like this, where you think, dang, we actually played pretty well, we did a lot of things right, and we still ended up losing, maybe it's just a bad matchup. Every team seems to have a couple.
Well, this is number what in a row now?
10.
Combine that with Collingwood also be able to beat Port in Adelaide and everywhere right now, and it's kind of insane. How does this keep happening? I mean, yes, Collingwood year in and year out have been the better team, but it's the fact that these games tend to remain close too. Having said that,
this one was not as close. This was not like edge of your seat stuff.
The Crows' last lead, I believe, was a little bit past halfway in the third quarter.
Yes, 23. And yes, the Crows did get it back down to 10 with a little over 5 minutes left, but they couldn't really get any closer from that. And Collingwood did a good job cleaning out the rest of the clock.
By the way, if you heard the song Start, Then Stop, Then Start Again, that wasn't a production error. That's because that happened in this game, and it was pretty funny, not as funny as the GABA having the wrong song playing at the end of that 2022 elimination final. But they started playing Good Old Collingwood Forever before the game was actually officially over because Isaac Rankin decided, yeah, why not take a barrel from the center square? Every point does count. I don't know, we need more song shenanigans.
This one was pretty funny because the fans kept singing when the music had stopped. I got a kick out of it. It was pretty goofy.
Again, the GABA snafu from 2022 is still way better, but this ranks pretty highly.
Here's the surprising thing if you go back and look at this game, is that Adelaide actually won clearances by 10 and inside 50s by 8. And normally, if you're the Crows, this is a team with a really strong forward group and decent defense, and you think to yourself, all right, if we just get a half-decent game out of the midfield, we really like our chances. But I think Collingwood's size defensively causes a lot of problems.
And I think that's honestly crazier in this game because they were without Darcy Moore. But who did his job once again? Premiership defender and former Crow,
Billy Frampton.
Riley Philthorpe, goalless.
The combo of Jeremy Howe, Isaac Quaynor, and Braden Maynard all contributed as well.
You see, when you're talking about size, Quaynor and Maynard aren't really big guys in there. Just really productive games from all of them. I mean, they were the autonomous collective that they ought to be, and Maynard kept his head straight as the captain for this game.
My thing with the size is they have the size at the key positions to neutralize Adelaide's key forwards.
I mean, Jeremy Howe is how tall? He's 6'3". So yeah, you're giving up a little bit of height there, but Howe can make up for it with his vertical. Frampton, meanwhile, is 6'7". He can match up fine with those guys. And if you have Cameron come down and help, Cameron's 6'8". So they do have enough size there.
You know who I really liked for Collingwood in this game, who I really wasn't a fan of last year at all?
Is there somebody that I should be thinking about right away that you didn't like last year? I mean, we're continuing to talk about the rise of Ned Long, but that's kind of been established.
Josh Dacos. I just thought last year he was just kind of there. His 29 disposals in this game were meaningful. He had 11 intercepts. Even if he's not getting a lot of contested possessions, he's putting himself close enough to the action to get involved at key moments. And while Nick Dacos has still been good, he just hasn't set the world on fire this year like he did last year. And a lot of that's a credit to other teams matching up with him and game planning for him. Josh has been part of what's picked up the slack. And I really think at this point, this Collingwood team does not necessarily have the ability to pull out improbable games like they did in 2023 or the out-of-this-world season that Nick Dacos had last year. But as a whole, I think they're better.
Josh has steadily been more involved on the defensive side, I think, this year than last, where it was more ball moving, keeping the width. I'm not sure if it's him taking his game to another level or just kind of finding the touch defensively that he had again in 2023. But whatever it is, it's working a lot.
And Jack Crisp, even if he wasn't as good as he was at Freo a week ago, he ended up with a goal off 16 disposals and 10 contested possessions. It was just very heavily involved once again.
So that's number 247 for him now, I think. Scheduling was a bit different this week because you had a direct afternoon overlap rather than the evening. And that was a mistake.
Well, was it? I mean, if the last game of the night hadn't been so shitty, this would have been a good choice because it's not like either of these games were down to the wire affairs either.
I guess, yeah. Port Adelaide 5-9-39, defeated by Geelong 17-13, 115. I kind of want to give it the Louis treatment here because while I felt good about Geelong's chances in this game, I didn't see it being a 76-point win by any means, and I'm just disappointed that they didn't manage to score 4 or more.
The Knicks scored 119 that day.
Right. What do I know about this game? I know about hamstrings, I know about short benches, and I know about Jeremy Cameron's 7 goals.
Yeah, so that kind of explains it. Urinating Tree, one of my favorite YouTubers, will refer to a game as the Injury Bowl, but that's usually teams that have been already ravaged by injuries. Whereas this time it happened just within the first half. And that's really what shaped things here. Josh Sin got a knee to the hip from Mark O'Connor and got subbed out not much more than halfway through the first quarter. Then Jason Horn-Francis did his hamstring. Then Jack Bowes did his hamstring. Then Patrick Dangerfield did his hamstring. And then Lockie Jones, who had been doing a good job on Jeremy Cameron, did his. So you went from Port with a short bench to both teams with a short bench, and then to Port with an even shorter bench, and would have been a pretty ugly first half. Geelong was up 9 at the break, and then second half, Port, knowing that they're down to 20 guys, came to the reasonable conclusion, all right, we're going to have to slow this down. Only problem is Geelong's a team that thrives on opponents slowing it down, and unlike St. Kilda a week earlier, saw, hey, we're facing a short-handed opponent, let's run like crazy and tire them out,
and then let's all go get some frosty chocolate milkshakes.
Yeah, pretty much. Ollie Dempsey's third quarter was similar to Isaac Heaney's game the night before. This would have been an amazing performance if he had kicked straight. It was still a great third quarter for him. He ended up with 11 disposals, 3 marks, a goal and 3 behinds. He was ridiculous. Bailey Smith was great in the middle all game. I thought this was probably his best performance since the first game of the year.
And hey, look, that was against another team that slowed things down a lot because that was Freezemantle.
Anytime he's over 70% efficiency, you got to feel pretty good about your chances.
Efficiency is not a perfect stat by any means, but Smith is often highlighted as being a less efficient midfielder. So that's where the relevance comes in there.
He finished with 30 disposals, 10 score involvements, 9 inside 50s, 8 marks, 7 clearances, 4 were center clearances, 2 assists, and 700 meters. And even though Jeremy Cameron kicked 7, a fair amount of those were late. And I actually am in agreement here with the coaches' votes, kind of. Oh, I'm Smith 5 and the other gave Smith 4, and then one coach gave Cameron 5, Smith 3, and somebody else 4.
I would not be shocked if Chris Scott gave Mark O'Connor 4 on his own.
I don't know, but Mark O'Connor did have a really good game. I thought, all right, he had his good one quarter, and now he's going to come back to earth, and he got caught holding the ball midway through the second, and I was fed up with him because he hasn't been good for a while. And then he ended up actually really holding it down on a back line that, is still missing Tom Stewart. He should be back this week against the Dogs.
This felt like O'Connor's best halfback flank game in a long time. And it's going to be his role going forward because he's no longer the tagger in this team.
I mean, he can still do some of it, but primarily that's O'Sheen Mullen's job. Mullen minimized the impact of Zach Butter's 20 disposals.
Yeah, 7 tackles for Mullen, a good showing.
One of the quieter 20 disposal games I've ever seen, if we're talking about Zach Butters. And yeah, Jeremy Cameron, I would love to see, he had 5 in the opener against Fremantle and then 7 here. I would love to see this translate to just more games where he's kicking like 3, in some of the tight games where you need him to really step up.
More like steady Charlie Curnow Coleman season type showings. Other things that I did notice, get Ryan Myers and Brad Close to share and good things happen. Close, high impact per touch again, 1-1 and 3 assists from 15 back home in South Australia. Remember, he's from Mount Gambier. Ryan with 27, including a great sort of messy setup and 32 pressure acts as well. His most active pressuring game of the year, I'd say.
Yeah, it's funny. Champion Data actually had him as best on ground. I didn't have him in my top, 5 or so. And I am the biggest Ryan Myers fan out there, obviously. The second half, just pretty much everyone got downhill and the onslaught began. And, as much as you hate losing to Port and as irritating as they can be, it was not fun to see them reduced to such a shell of themselves. And I think the broadcasters were way too harsh on them at first. I understand why things went to shit. They didn't have most of their team. They were down to 20 guys. They were also, by the way, missing Kane Farrell for this game, who had knee surgery. I do think in the fourth quarter, they completely mailed it in. But the third quarter, they just got outplayed by a team that had an additional Bobby. Fourth quarter was bad, though. Fourth quarter, they did really mail it in.
That was 7-4 to 1 goal in Geelong's favor with Cameron cashing in some late ones. Cameron had the last 2 goals of the game and actually had 5 of his 7 in the fourth. Had the first 3 of the term and then the last 2. And then his only others were the last 2 of the first half. So even though it's a 7-goal game, I have a feeling that when I go back and watch, I'll probably be in agreement that Bailey Smith is best on ground for the sake of consistency.
I think it's worth considering, and this was talked about on Postgame Live on Saturday night, which, by the way, started off with Lucas and Kiri from outside the Adelaide Oval. They were hysterical.
Hope we can meet up with them.
But I think it's fair to ask about how, Dangerfield's absence affects the forward line. And my hope is that the way they've changed the structure in those couple of quarters without him sticks. And then even when he's back, that they continue to do so. Because Brad Close getting more involved is good. They were clearly looking for Cameron more. And again, some of that also came from just exploiting Lockie Jones's absence, because Jones, until getting hurt, had done a really good job on Cameron. But I think there was something there. You saw better stuff out of Ollie Henry and Shannon Neal. Shannon Neal, between some forward ruck time, put up some really interesting numbers. 7 of his 17 hitouts to advantage, only 11 disposals, which, for a key forward is fine. Only 1 goal, but 11 score involvements. So I assume you're counting a couple of hitouts to advantage that didn't record a disposal.
Yeah, that would do it. We've mentioned this before. Rucks can get high ratings, high score launches because of those hitouts and knock-ons. I think other players are capable of getting as well, but little things that Champion Data takes note of.
Dangerfield, as of now, is set to miss 1 to 2 weeks. They're going to go more conservative with an older guy. I would read that as 2 to 3. I would say there's pretty much no chance he plays in 2 weeks, the trip out to Perth. But I would say, just judging off this prognosis, that there's like a decent chance, maybe like 50 to 60%, that he's back for that game against the Suns in round 13, and probably at least an 80% chance that he's playing in round 14 against Essendon. And then round 15 is against the Lions before the bye. So I would love to have him for the games against the Queensland teams. And that his is the less severe of the two, I think, is reason for optimism.
Thinking about Farrell's absence for Porth, going back to that, it definitely put Jace Burgoyne in a more interesting role. More active with the ball in the defensive 50, a steadier job there, but also busier defensively where that isn't always his strong suit. I think it showed his versatility, though, so credit to Jace for that. He's a player that I very much enjoy watching.
Yeah, see, I didn't think he matched up poorly. He did a pretty good job against Tyson Stengel. That was a fun one-on-one to watch as the game went on. And he did well in an atypical role. The problem is just they had to, out of necessity, take him out of a spot that they really like him in and that he really thrives in. And I think while he still did fine individually, his impact on the team from his normal role is better. But really, they had no choice here.
The other game going on at that time, we had some history as Wyalup, Fremantle, recorded their first ever win at NG Stadium. GWS 8-13-61, defeated by the Dockers 13-17-95. Want to take note, by the way, that, of course, Wyalup were not alone in changing their names for Sir Doug Nicholls Round. Adelaide, Guarna, Port, Yardapulti, Melbourne, Narm, West Coast, Wallich Barawar, and St Kilda, Euro, Yorok also changed their names again. I don't think there were any new ones there this year.
No, there were not.
Something that we didn't mention from the prior game, Lawson Humphreys scoring a goal in the jumper that he and his family designed.
Yes, I meant to mention that. It was mostly his sister who designed it. But yeah, that was one of the highlights of the night for sure.
We saw every team but one use one of their designs this round.
Wait, who didn't? I thought, did Richmond not? Are they saving theirs for Dreamtime?
Yeah, I guess they also didn't want to wear gold at home.
Okay, I get how that would have clashed with North, so that's understandable.
But about this game at the showground, largely one that the Dockers controlled and should have been much more dominant on the scoreboard. But when it really mattered, Shade Bolton and Michael Frederick on either side of halftime got some important ones in there. And those were two of the most dynamic players throughout this game. This may have been Bolton's best yet as a Docker. I feel like we're saying that over and over. Bolton 3-3 and an assist from 24. 8 marks, 3 tackles, and 3 clearances, finishing with 10 scored involvements, which was one off the game high, which was set by Freddie, who finished 3-2 himself and 2 assists. So a lot of direct scored involvements for both of them. And this just felt like an I told you so game, because we know what the Dockers are able to do when they push the pace. They have a strong midfield duo supplemented by a pretty good third man right now, too. Obviously, the focus will be on Sarong and Brayshaw, but while Hayden Young is out, Matty Johnson is doing a nice job taking that step up. And then Bolton's getting plenty of time in the center as well. We know that. And between Bolton, Freddie, and Murphy Reed is a team that can easily push the pace, running in waves from the middle third, and can put on persistent pressure too. You saw them having the better pressure throughout this game and converting off of holding the ball calls that they got, and justifiably so. It just felt like a restoration of what was right for Fremantle in a lot of ways.
You know, I talked a week ago, if GWS had come out and beaten Geelong a few weeks earlier, it would have been like, yeah, they're really good. But then they go and have a really crappy month or so. Now you think, oh, okay, now they're back on. Maybe last week was the aberration and they're just struggling right now.
Finn Callahan had a busy start to the third quarter, but no other Giant was really going with him as I saw it. They were desperate for a goal to break the momentum, but they ended up goalless for the third, no goals, 5. They kept struggling to get deeper entries, unlike Wyalup, despite being capable of creating tsunamis. So difficulties with those final kicks there. There were a couple early wins for Aaron Cadman and Jesse Hogan, but by and large, the Dockers Tulls held up, so there's that. And Freo's efficiency by foot was good too. But this was also a game where I think it was Jared Healy on the broadcast noted that he really saw the lack of the Giants' midfield depth between what they were missing with Cumming and Peatling having been traded, and also Canelio and Kelly being out. I keep saying Josh Kelly is the piece that ties things together. He is actually the glue guy in every positive way for this orange midfield. And without him, it's pretty telling.
And now Callahan's hurt too?
Yeah, played through a shoulder dislocation after being really aggressive right on the 3/4 time siren because Finn Callahan has only one speed. And now he's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks.
That is a seriously killer injury. This is where, before that, I still had a lot of confidence in this team.
Now, I still have long-term confidence in this team, but
unlike Kane Corns, who for some reason that's a team whose position you really wouldn't want to be in the next few years. They're loaded with talent.
And yeah, they're starting to phase out some older guys, but you've got academy players that can help bring those things up. Toby Green is going to bring up 250 this week. He's still just 31, has plenty of good footy left in him, I think. But if you look at the injuries that they have, Kelly's still 1 to 2 weeks out. Could be another month without all of Brent Daniels, Stephen Canelio, and now Callahan.
Damn. I guess the hope for this coming week is that they always play the Blues tough, and maybe Toby can milestone magic them through it. But God, losing Callahan is just I guess you're probably leaning on Jacob Ware, Joe Fonte, guys that I like.
Fonte did not have a good game as more of a defender here, so my confidence isn't high there.
I guess you could throw Darcy Jones in his helmet. I mean, he kind of extends into the midfield as well.
And he's going to need to do that next week. Tom Green had his 25 and 5 clearances, but wasn't overwhelming in any way, though he was 88% efficient, so there's that. But Xavier O'Halloran needs to have a more composed and involved game. His frustration was clear. Maybe Ryan Anglin could get the call up because I've liked what he's done.
I really liked Josiah Delana in the sub role against Geelong. I think he was tough to get dropped in the first place. He seems like a logical inclusion.
Yeah, Delana and maybe one other like Anglin or Leak.
But has your tone gotten more and more negative about this team as well? Because mine definitely has.
I mean, before the injury to Callahan, it already wasn't looking great. Now with Finn out too, and they're already... they are still just in 8th, but I obviously favor the Blues against them. I could totally see Richmond beating them because Richmond has pulled off stuff at the showground before. They host Port after that really, really important game there, round 13. And then at Brisbane and hosting Gold Coast in the Expansion Cup before the bye. That's probably where my gauntlet dies if it hasn't already by round 15.
So I guess just if they can weather the storm while Callahan's out, it could feel a lot better.
Pick up 2 wins out of these next 5. Still though, it isn't great. You do have the Eagles and Kangas the later part of the year. Finish with the Saints at home. But no one stretch of the schedule makes me think, they could really right the ship here.
Now, I think when their VFL team played Geelong a couple weeks ago, they had 15 AFL listed players in that. So there are depth options to draw from, but they're going to have to press the right buttons and get contributions out of those guys because, look, that's a lot of important players they're missing now. Since we're talking about a team up in Sydney, I guess this would be an appropriate time for
the part where we talk about the NRL.
Okay, so 2 things happened. First off, Mark Nawaqanita had a legitimately awesome try that even as someone who doesn't think rugby league is that cool, this was awesome. Where he kind of kicked it the final 10 meters to himself, tiptoed the boundary, and at one point hopped on 1 foot to make sure he stayed in bounds.
This is up there with one of the better rugby league tries I've ever seen. either code of rugby, honestly.
And the best thing about this is that you can use his success to advance any narrative you want, whether that be there are a bunch of really good rugby league players who could go play for the Wallabies, or that rugby union is way harder than rugby league because the moment a union player switches to league, they can do this.
I mean, you're seeing success going both ways, like Joseph Suaalii, who went to the opposite direction from the Roosters to the Waratahs, has done well in Super Rugby. I'm just amazed by this guy's hair and his full name. Mark Hermano Dukutoko Nawakanitawase. He is of mixed Fijian and Italian heritage.
Oh, I guess I should also mention that my plan for the flight to Australia is to lay over in Fiji for a day.
Where in Fiji? We'd be just staying close to the airport?
Just close to the airport in Nandi.
Unfortunately, it's like a weekday, so no chance for you getting any rugby action.
No, but I'm just going to hang out on the beach in Fiji.
And you're not much of a beach goer.
No, but in Fiji, I think that's pretty cool.
I think I know what the other happening is. That Xavier Coates grab and try.
Yeah. Wow. I don't know if it would quite be Mark of the Week, but kind of got up over a guy's shoulder. Didn't really sit on him, but he got up.
Really, the sit was more on the way down, and it's a shame that the Storm couldn't manage to finish things off from there as they ended up falling by 5.
That's really all I got, especially just with having Fox Soccer Plus now. We have almost every AFL game on live TV in some capacity, which means I don't throw on an NRL game in the background when we only have games on Watch AFL, because very few are only on Watch AFL. But those two moments needed to be acknowledged and celebrated.
And we've got Origin coming up next week, so we'll embrace that too. But this has been the pod where we talk about the NRL.
You know, Benjamin, 78% of our listeners are between 18 and 35 years old, so they probably want to start a podcast like we did. How did you know that number, Ethan? Thanks to the analytics we have for Spotify for Podcasters. Formerly known as Anchor, sorry Frio fans, Spotify for Podcasters has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast from your phone or your computer, no fancy software needed. It's so easy you can edit it while drunk. And Spotify for Podcasters doesn't just allow you to upload to Spotify, you can also distribute your podcast on platforms like Apple, Stitcher, and more, just like we do. Best of all, it's completely free. Not only is it free, you can even make money from listener support or ad revenue. Hint, hint. Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to podcasters.spotify.com to get started today.
And welcome back to episode 238 of Americans Watching the Footy, recapping round 10 of the 2025 home and away season. I'm Ethan Castle. Find me on Twitter at Castle Media. That's with a K.
I can't believe we have to keep saying that. I am Benjamin Castle at BenjaminHK01 on Twitter. You can find us collectively at Americans Footy on multiple platforms. Where's the executive producer?
Sleeping right next to me. You find him on Instagram at CatNameGrian. And if you ever see a gibberish tweet that just looks like keyboard mashing or holding one key down and then, it's signed with a G at the end, that's just me posting whatever he types because he likes to walk across the keyboard a lot.
Doesn't do it as much with my computer when I'm home, but yours all the time.
We got 4 more games to run through, and the first of those 4, the Saturday night game, really validated my decision. So that Friday night in round 20 has 2 games. A rematch between Essendon and the Bulldogs and Sydney Derby. And from a cost standpoint, just sticking around in Melbourne and going to a game at Marvel would be prudent. But instead, going to spend less than 24 hours in Sydney, I'm kind of going to World of T-shirts it. Basically just drink and go see the major attractions only. It's going to be ooh, bridge, ooh, opera house. Okay, football time. Okay, back to the hotel right by the airport, and I'm flying out. My new term is joshing it. When you speed run a vacation and you just drink and only go to the most notable landmarks and stuff. Anyway, I don't think I need to see the rematch between the Bulldogs and Bombers because this sucked. Western Bulldogs 18-19-127 defeated Essendon 5-6-36.
Did this really suck though? Sometimes it's fun to see this sort of flattening. 7 goals to none in the first, 10-8, 68 to 139 at the main break. I guess it's because we don't have it really out for Essendon.
Well, this sucked for 2 reasons. 1, it was a standalone game. 2, I was really hoping the Dogs could wear Essendon. I was really hoping Essendon could wear the Dogs out ahead of their short turnaround heading into Geelong. But I guess the way to spin this into a positive is to think, well, there's no way the Bulldogs can physically play any better than this, so they have to come down from it. Just a question of how far down.
And yet, I can see things being all right in terms of accuracy, things being better for the Dogs, because again, 18-19.
A lot of those misses were later, though. They kicked 3-6 in the fourth quarter and 8-11 for the entire second half. And just from a performance standpoint, you really can't ask for much better than this on pretty much any scale.
Bailey Dale set a Bulldogs record with 49 disposals and gained 1,016 meters. Now, when we have those big numbers, the first question is always functionality, because you can gain a kilometer and not do anything with it, as Aaron Hall showed us once.
There was some stat padding in this in the fourth quarter.
Was it like kind of a quest to get Bailey Dale that record?
It kind of went back and forth. I think towards the end, they were like, okay, we've got a shot at 50, let's go for it. And they didn't quite get him there.
But the previous record for the Dogs was 47, I believe. Ryan Griffin and Jack McRae had it.
But I think Dale only had 3 contested possessions. Now, I forget which Bulldogs fan on Twitter it was that said this and pointed this out. But I haven't thought of this before. The argument in favor of uncontested possessions is that it shows that he kept getting open. And yes, that was true. And I thought in the first half, he was much more impactful and functional than second half. But you could also make a case for so many other big performers in this game, whether that be Ed Richards, Tom Liberatore, Matt Kennedy once again. Defensively, Rory Lobb was really sharp, as was James O'Donnell.
There you go, beast.
Buku Kamis, 3 goals. Riley West, 4 goals.
And what did Riley West do after one of those?
He hit the 2 small. It was awesome. Once again, I advocate for short people doing the 2 small celebration. He was getting taken high by Archie Roberts and then kind of bounced off him and kicked it and then did the 2 small. It was great. Short people, please keep doing the 2 small.
Thing is, though, Riley West is 6 feet tall, and
that's generous. I don't think he is.
He's listed at 182 centimeters, and Archie Roberts is barely taller than him.
Yeah, I think he's more 5'10" at most.
What is this, Tinder or wrestling heights?
Basketball heights are pretty ridiculous too, especially at the high school level.
Example?
All of them. Unless you're a legit 7-footer and then they want to get it exact. Otherwise, they're always adding on. There was a joke a few years ago that a coach's kid was given an extra 4 inches as a birthday present.
That could be taken multiple ways.
I know, which is concerning, but kid who was 5'8" getting listed at 6 feet. What are we doing here? Who is this for? Anyway, this was an ass kicking from the start. Took the Dogs about 9 minutes of clock time to get their first goal, but they had a ton of great pressure before that. So this could have been one of those things where it's all right, Essendon, you weathered the storm. You were getting your ass kicked and it didn't show up on the scoreboard. And then no, the Dogs just kept kicking their asses and it showed up on the scoreboard.
This was the Bulldogs' biggest halftime lead since the 2021 prelim.
They got back-to-back goals where Mason Redmond gave up a free kick on a goal by elbowing Latham Vandermeer in the stomach. I guess you can kind of call this. Are they allowed to just have the jurisdiction to say it's a free kick, but from the center? Because I think that would have been the more appropriate discipline for this.
I don't know if it's that or if it's an automatic downfield. I would rather have it be just a free kick from the center and only have downfield as well, egregious cases, which free kick at 50 is close enough to what the downfield is going to be anyway, so just say downfield.
45-3 after a quarter. It never got better. Essendon were just really bad on all fronts.
The term passengers definitely popped up in your discussion as well as that of others.
And here's the funny thing. the guy they subbed out, Saad Al-Hali, at halftime, I don't really think he was so much of a passenger. Like, I had noticed him. I mean, I don't think any individual was that terrible. They were just all collectively bad instead of like a couple outrageously awful specific performers.
Polished turd must have been really difficult here.
I'm thinking Ben Mackay, actually. I actually thought he was pretty good. He only got beat once or twice. I guess for the sub, Al-Hali had 9 touches by halftime. He was actually visible. I probably would have gone with, I don't know, like maybe Ben Hobbs.
He was playing dead.
Or maybe you could have gone, like, I know he gets numbers, but wasn't impressed with Andrew McGrath. Could have gone with, like, him or Redmond for that.
I mean, definitely would have made a statement with that. Looking at the quarter splits for Bailey Dale, by the way, just wanted to see what the splits were by quarter. It was 12, 13, 14, and 10. So double-digit disposals in every quarter. I feel like that's a question for Swab or someone like that, just like the frequency of 10 plus disposals for a player in every quarter.
But yeah, the 25 in the first half were much more impactful than the 24 in the second half, is my opinion. I didn't have too many revelations out of this game because, I already have been saying, and I've believed for quite some time, that the Bulldogs at their best, there's a tier of teams that like their best day is truly elite.
The Dogs are up there with the Lions.
Probably GWS.
Would you put Hawthorne there?
I said maybe Hawthorne or Carleton, and probably the Suns. I would still put Port in that category too. But the one thing I got out of this game that was new is, like, I had been aware of this before, but hadn't thought about it much, was just how Ed Richards is really good on 2 different fronts. One, he stretches the field really well, which I've always liked. And 2, he plays at so many different angles. He can do stuff from along the boundary. He can do stuff through the corridor. He attacks the game in different directions, and that makes him a really tricky player to go up against. And it's funny, in past years, one of the things that's worked against Marcus Bontempelli getting a Brownlow is, there are times when other players have kind of gotten in his way, and I think that's happening again, but it's a little bit different. It's happening more where he's still been really good, and it's just, I probably wouldn't include him in my top few players in this game by no fault of his own. He did just fine. Just other guys were even better. And it's not impeding on what he's trying to do. He didn't get any coaches' votes in this game. 7 different players did. And I think I totally understand there's justification for all of those. And Matt Kennedy wasn't even in there. So that's at least 8 guys you could put ahead of Bond, who, again, did nothing wrong. Just other guys were even better.
On to Sunday. Some trends broke in big ways. Richmond, for the first time, lost under Adam Uze when keeping their opponent under 80 points. But more importantly, North Melbourne notched their first win at the MCG in over 8 years. The Tigers, 11-8-74, defeated by the Kangas, 12-6-78. Holy shit, they did it? In front of more than 50,000, by the way.
I have watched hardly any of this game. I saw the last couple minutes, and I've seen, I've had a replay on in the background, but haven't really locked in and watched it closely. What I can tell you is I was really impressed with just the turnout by North fans. That's probably the best turnout I've seen from their fan base as a whole in something other than one of their big home games in I don't even know how long.
Plus, you've got a better Richmond crowd given their recent form and just the optimism around the team in the first place. And it was Camden McIntosh's 200, so headbands. Now, this was a fun vibe, but the game itself, if you had to define it in one word, it would be stoppages. There were 137 of them.
Sounds like a great day to have either Tobin Nankervis or Tristan Jerry in fantasy.
Great battle between the two of them. Jerry ended up getting the better of Nankervis narrowly, I would say. And I think did he get the perfect 10 for this game? No, he got 9 with Cam Zurhar getting 8.
So that's 2 straight really quality games for Zurhar then, because I liked him down in Tasmania too, even if he had a couple of pretty impactful misses.
Yeah, Zurhar in this one ended up with 4 goals straight off just 9 disposals and an assist as well. So nearly every time he had the ball, he was doing something really important, and 100% disposal efficiency. He was prone to giving up some frees, 4 of them, but given his scoreboard impact, I think Kangas fans will let that slide. But yeah, there were more stoppages in the first half of this game than the entire Bulldogs-Bombers game the night before.
Why was that? Was it just a lot of ball up? Did the ball keep going out of bounds? Were there a lot of free kicks? What was it?
Lots of tackles, sir. We had 6 players in double-digit tackles in this game.
Did it take away from the watchability at all?
I think for some people they would say yes, but I was just fascinated on seeing when things would break open. And the second half did have some freer flowing moments. Richmond had them to start, and then North figured out how to kind of have this zigzag movement going on, going back out wide from the corridor, and managed to break Richmond's defensive setup in the midfield a few times. They also had the better pressure out of the half as well, and 4 of the 6 players with double-digit tackles in this game were, in fact, Kangaroos. Overall, the tackle count in this game was 92 all. But the tackles inside 50, 22-6 in Richmond's favor, which tells you something about the quality of North's entries, because North were actually -4 in inside 50s, I think just deeper a lot of the time, and Richmond kept having to hold up the ball there. There were a couple sections of repeat stoppages there inside 50. Want to have a guess at who those players with double-digit tackles were?
There were 4 of them for North, you said?
Yeah, 2 for Richmond.
All right, then let's talk out a couple of the obvious ones. Wardlaw,
10.
Davies Uniacke.
No, 5.
Wow. Simpkin?
6. Let's take a couple easy ones out. Both the Rucks had double digits.
Okay, so I'm looking for 3 others.
2 others for North. I'll tell you, they're both youngsters.
Tom Powell?
No, he had 6 and had a couple good runs, 4 clearances and an assist for him, too. I'll just tell you that, Sheasel and McKercher.
Sheasel getting involved physically. Let's go.
Yeah, Sheasel with an octopus and 5 clearances. McKercher an octopus and 4 clearances, along with a goal. McKercher, the second highest rated player in this game, at 17.9 rating points, only behind Cherry, and 89% kick efficiency. Actually involved more kind of in the center width of the ground and deeper as well. This was a game where he really saw McKercher's potential, instead of him just kind of being resigned to a flank role.
And then for Richmond, outside of Nankervis, Taranto?
No, Taranto had 4. I'm not sure if you get this, actually.
Hopper?
No, he also had 4. It was Jack Ross.
That was going to be my next guess.
Ah, there you go. But just
After Ross, I probably would have guessed, Mansell or Campbell.
Mansell had 7. But yes, I knew you'd get a kick out of Harry Sheasel and Colby McKercher having double-digit tackles. Wardlaw just willing to take on all comers, whatever. Only 14 touches, but 4 clearances, 8 contested possessions. Efficiency remains an issue, but just driving play forward through contest was a big factor. He also had this great bump on Nick Vostard on the boundary in the 4th quarter that directly led to a goal because he managed to keep the play going. He kept the play alive on the boundary, and then Zurhar connected with Larkey to give North the lead again. There actually wasn't a goal scored in the final 9 minutes, 14 seconds of clock time in this game, despite Richmond having multiple opportunities, like a fair number of them, actually. Also want to credit Toby Pink for stepping up for some big intercepts and plays in the 4th quarter, including a run down as well.
He had also looked pretty decent in that Tasmania game, which, last time we had recorded, I had not really watched that yet. He was okay, and I think the thing I liked the most out of that game, while we're on the subject, was the 2nd quarter out of Colby McKercher, even if he faded after that. So, we're starting to see more of what McKercher could be, which, that's good.
North were content to defend and close out this game rather than pursuing to score again, which I'm often not a fan of, but you know what? It worked, and it's the first time I've really seen North be able to do that. I can't think of them really doing that against the D's. I felt like they just kind of kept their strategy the whole time there through the end, so that's a plus there that they can figure out how to close things out. Stronger points for Richmond were a bit tougher to come by because just a lot of my positive notes ended up being around North in terms of the individuals in particular. I noted Toby Nankervis looking forward on every hit out being an important factor there as to why Richmond ended up getting the edge in a couple of those statistics. When the Tigers got their runs to start the third quarter as they had in the second, that was a time where obviously Taranto was managing to create out of the center, as was Ross. Ross did more directly at the source, although nobody ever had more than 3 center clearances in this game. Just Ross managed to do a lot right away, and then guys like Taranto were able to take advantage from there. Leader in score involvements in this game, once again, Seth Campbell. 3-2 from 15, 3 clearances as well. I saw this coming, but maybe not to this degree of just how quickly Campbell has elevated his game. And you've really got something there between him and Mansell on the smaller end, plus what they're developing on the tall side too. Tom Sims getting another goal. Jonty Fall, even though he didn't get one, I keep liking his instincts. Like, even with minimal touch, I just see him in the right areas a lot. Didn't even mention Sealy Green on the small side either as another one who can pop up there. And then a couple highlight goals for sure. Hugo Ralph Smith had one that I showed you for a very good reason because it's Hugo. And Sam Lawler keeps finding good ways to impact around center half forward. I'm not sure this might have been the first time that Sam Lawler interacted with Dustin Martin, by the way, because Dusty was there.
Oh, cool. Was he just hanging out watching the game, or?
He was in the rooms before, probably because it was Camden's 200th.
Oh, cool.
Now, the real whoa, where did that come from? Whoa for this round.
Whoa! Where did that come from? Whoa!
Brisbane Lions, 13-10-88. Defeated by Melbourne, 14-15-99. What the fuck?
So this is a game that I took charge on, and really interesting one where the Lions jumped out to a 39-22 lead after a quarter. I think their largest lead was, 19 a couple times in the middle quarters.
The Lions actually led by 24 in the early part of the second quarter.
But basically the lead bounced around between 10 and 20-ish for a lot of the game. There were some stretches in the first half, specifically in the second quarter, where it felt like they could have probably hit a shot or two that would have pulled away. But even then, this game never felt like there was that much of a disparity in performance between the two teams. And Melbourne ultimately won this one by taking the fourth quarter 4-8 to 1-1. How onslaught in the fourth, really.
A frustrating onslaught, but a win from Melbourne in one of the toughest places to pick up a road win.
I want to say this was frustrating, actually, just because of the power of expectations.
I guess, but also just 4-8 speaks for itself. And as I was watching on, I was just like, I was amazed by the outcome, but also thinking, damn, it would feel so much better if they actually got a couple more to go through the right posts, or the correct posts, I should say.
I mean, I think, yes, they took the lead on a behind, but then Aiden Johnson soccering home the one that put him up 7 was pretty neat.
He was one of 3 inclusions for this game for the Demons, along with Jake Melksham returning after management and Harrison Petty. Melksham still has it, and that's fun. 4-1 and 2 assists off 11 disposals and 7 marks. He is the elder statesman of this forward group, and I don't think a lot of non-D's fans realize how important he is and how difficult he'll be to replace, because he's got the defensive forward ability. Plus, he can also just go off like this.
He kind of outplayed Harris Andrews.
And being a smaller guy to do that and take Andrews off his game makes it all the more impressive.
He also, I think he got one that he had marked against Jack Payne. I thought Payne was really good, but I was just so impressed with, when I went online after, I had seen a bunch of people praising Max Gawn, and while he had good numbers, I didn't think he was really a standout. There were so many other performers that I liked. I thought this was Clayton Oliver's best game in the year, for one. Goal from 23 disposals, 7 clearances, 36 pressure acts. Trent Rivers had a monster first half and then kind of passed the torch to Oliver as the game went on.
Want to mention as well, Oliver was the one to match up on Lockie Neal, and while Neal got his 30, advantage still to Oliver?
Absolutely. It was a pretty quiet 30. Brisbane's midfield as a whole, I wasn't that impressed by. Like, yes, they got numbers, but it was kind of just right at the source instead of steering play elsewhere. I guess Hugh McCluggage did at times, but he wasn't accurate enough in key moments. Like, I was surprised his efficiency for the game was listed as like 75%, because by the eye test, I would have thought it would have been below 60. But there were some other really fun things. Once again, Kazi Pickett combining the midfield and forward role, even if he ended up kicking 2-4, I thought he was awesome. And then this might be the best game Christian Salem's played since they won the flag. He did a lot in that like center halfback role, kind of as part of the spine of the defense along with Stephen May. And I just thought he was super solid, both in an intercept role and in steering play back in the other direction.
I mean, I guess that's a spot where Bowie had been more prominent in prior weeks.
I mean, Bowie still did some of that, but he was more like closer to the center square. And Bowie was also doing more by hand and sweeping around, whereas Salem was, like really just straight up the middle.
Straight up the middle by foot, shall we say.
Now, I'm not going to jump on things and say, this all of a sudden makes Melbourne a legit finals contender. I mean, they're 4-6. They've won what now, 4 or 5?
They've certainly got a pulse. I'll say that.
Oh, no doubt. I'm just not jumping right away on throwing them into the finals conversation.
No, that would be far too premature. Got to follow this up with a good performance against the Swans. That's a heck of a middle Sunday game coming up now.
They've put themselves into the conversation, which I certainly wasn't feeling would even be a possibility at all. I was so low on them just in terms of just how everything looked, attitude-wise, it was all bad a few weeks ago, and morale-wise, things look a lot better. Let's say they go like 2-11 the rest of the way and finish 6-17. You would still be able to look at this game for the young guys, the Harvey Langfords, the Xavier Lindsays, and use this as a developing point and a jumping off point. This is a positive day, whether or not it has effects that lead to more wins within this season. They were the better midfield. They got a great game out of Bailey Fritsch in the sub role. That's the where did that come from?
Where did that come from? Whoa!
Even when Brisbane was in front, they never looked inept. And they shut down a lot of really good performers to the point that had Brisbane won, I bet you wouldn't be able to guess which players we would have been talking about. Or actually, maybe you would, because you have seen some of this.
Well, you did mention McCluggage already as someone who did manage to propel things forward. Jack Payne staying strong in his 1v1 defense is no surprise. Do want to credit Kadeen Coleman. Welcome back. 8 rebound 50s and 6 marks for him out of his 19.
The ovation he got for his intercept mark and first disposal made me happy.
Players that did manage to stick out to me aside from that. How about Logan Morris kicking another 3? Darcy Gardner 4 straight from 13. And in terms of the delivery, Zach Bailey with 10 score involvements stands out.
If the Lions had won this game, it would have been on the heels of Darcy Gardner and Zach Bailey. Darcy Gardner showing versatility as a tall playing different parts of the ground, running really well, getting out at the front of attack. And they needed that because Darcy Fort was filling in. Oscar McInerney was a...
Did you know that Darcy Gardner now has a career high for goals in a season? In fact, that game would have sufficed on its own.
Wow. Well, maybe that'll help with the forward structure. If Sam Day's not available, there's another guy you can turn to.
And that's another just lifeline for Gardner to stay in the side as more of the defense gets healthy. Kadeen, Tom Duday eventually.
And that's where if you're Brisbane, I don't think you can be all that frustrated despite losing this game. Because you can look at this and say, well, our best players mostly didn't play very well, but we got a bunch of solid depth contributions. Now, it would be really frustrating if this is like a one-game flash-in-the-pan thing for Gardner. But if there's something that this can actually lead to, this will be a long-term gain at the expense of 4 points. And then, Jack Payne, I've talked about him, but he's having a tremendous season. I don't know if he's quite in the conversation to get into that 44-man extended all-Australian squad.
And I don't think he will because he isn't publicized enough. He was 5-0 in his contested 1v1s in this game. He usually plays his best when he's able to play off Harris Andrews, and it was more him doing it on his own in this game.
Yeah, Andrews was still decent, but not unbeatable, as got proven a few times by Jake Melksham.
Which is, again, just hell of a performance by Melksham to do that at his age and his size compared to Andrews.
West Coast 16-12, 108 defeat St. Kilda 12-8-80. I had a feeling like if there was a game for the Eagles to win, this would be one of them.
I did have that feeling too, also because they have put on one of their best performances of last year as Walid Marawar, and these jumpers are even better.
And they could have beaten the Saints at home last year. And take me through this in the most concise manner you can, I guess.
Exhale. That's one word, just exhale. They got one. How about a wire-to-wire win? That's something that I didn't expect to say. I would have expected a more contested game throughout, but the Eagles had 3 of the first 4 goals and didn't look back. They led by 12 at quarter time, 19 at the half, and 28 at 3/4 time and at the end. Yes, they did not lose a quarter. And they scored in a lot of different ways, a lot of different players getting involved, 5 different multi-goal scores, all of which with just 2 goals.
So they won 3 quarters and drew 1. Now, entering this game, how many quarters had they won and how many had they drawn for the whole season?
Geez, maybe like 4. Do you know who the multi-goal scorers were?
I'm gonna guess Harley Reid and Liam Ryan were in that.
Yes, they both kicked 2-1. A couple long goals for both of them. Liam Ryan ended up bringing this game home between late goals and assists, where he didn't have a whole lot of forward 50 involvement before that, but did manage 4 clearances also.
You said there were how many multi-goal scorers?
For the Eagles, 5, so you named 2 of them.
Oscar Allen and Jake Waterman.
Yes, Allen kicking 2-2. Damn, that felt good.
Now, I also had the replay of this on in the background, so wasn't watching it closely, but that helped me figure that out. But who's the 5th?
Bailey J.
Okay. Wow.
Including 1. Is it a Goal of the Week nominee? How the fuck is this not? So the Eagles got robbed of a Goal of the Week and Mark of the Week nominee? The mark was Harley Reid over Allen, and the Goal of the Week was Bailey J knocking a ball down to himself off of an Allen high kick. I was just laughing because just Bailey J. Williams managing to do this again.
I mean, Peter Laddams almost kicked one of the goals of the year, so maybe this was just the week for that.
But that's also not the goal that got me the most pumped in this game, and you know that.
It was Brady Hawk's first career goal.
A lot of shots before, had this steadier midfield time, ended up running with the Zion Wangini Melora like for a decent portion of the game, which was not something that I expected, but was interesting. Kept him involved the whole way. Off a goal from 24, an assist as well, 5 tackles and a couple clearances, 6 score involvements too. So they're really sticking with this midfield Brady Hoff thing, and yeah, I guess keep going with it for now. Just long term, I still want to see him as that lockdown small defender. It's great seeing this versatility from him, but I'm concerned that he's going to lose touch with this like primary skill set. You know, last week I was begging for them to bring Hoff back and try and quiet Ryan Mansell. Had Jack Higgins been more involved early rather than getting a couple of his 5 goals late, I would have been saying the same thing.
There are things that you can work on during training and during the course of the week that differ from what you actually do.
This was a comprehensive win in terms of regular ball control, even though they weren't their most accurate. I mean, 16-12 says otherwise, but some of those goals came late. I say the Eagles won this game more than the Saints lost it. And I don't just say that as an Eagles fan. Even though they were minus 70 clearances overall, they did more directly off of them. Their rebounds were a whole lot better. I think the Saints had to labor a lot more for the entries that they got. And they also were just so hesitant to let go of those tenets of Ross ball. I noted in the fourth quarter, they looked better once they started looking longer and taking risks,
I mean, there are matchups and there are times and places to slow teams down.
and that's how I see it as well.
But right now, they seem just too married to that,
And this one, they went towards it when there was no other option.
which is exactly what they did a week earlier, too, except they went away from it as the game went on instead of going towards it.
I'm thinking just like the old Professor Oak, there's a time and a place for everything, but not now. Other things to note from this game, steadier time for Tom Gross. I mean, unfortunately, it was because of an injury to Matt Owes, but Gross playing more than half of footy was good. Just getting more of a feel for the pace of the game is going to do good things for him. I just think this was overall a team win where there was no one huge statistical outlier or anything for the Eagles themselves.
The coaches' votes seem to reflect that.
I haven't taken a look at them, but I assume Liam Baker and Jack Graham both got a good amount of love. Baker drove a lot of play from the back, like halfback, I'll say. 18 disposals, 5 tackles, 3 clearances, and an assist for Baker.
Well, nobody got more than 7. Baker and Graham each with 7, Hoff 5, Ryan 4, Reed 3, and then Marshall and Higgins each with 2.
Yeah, Marshall won the ruck battle. That's to nobody's surprise whatsoever. But this is the type of game where you start seeing this on-field leadership that the former Tigers of Baker and Graham providing actually paid dividends. It was overall a game where the Eagles pressured better and forced Euroke into spots that they didn't necessarily want to take. They kept things slow, maybe out of Ross ball tendencies, but also because they didn't have as much to go to. And then they capitalized off of their ball control mistakes in the back half. And also a game like this, not just a win, but also a game where Hartley Reid takes multiple goals, probably does a world of good for him and the potential of him staying. Though I'm still not optimistic about that until I actually see pen on paper.
I also know that the Saints came out of this with an injury that, while it's not as long-term as Finn Callahan's, could be every bit as devastating, if not more, on a per-game basis. Jack McRae punctured lung.
Yes, I did see that. That was a later assessment there that's going to see him out for a couple weeks at least.
Yeah, I think I've alluded to how much
McRae matters to this team.
Yeah, he's kind of this might be the team that's the most reliant on an individual player, and he's clearly that individual. So these next couple weeks could be really, really rough without him.
And those matchups, of course, are the Suns at home, the D's at the G, and then the Dogs at Marvel in what's technically a home game. If it goes beyond that, Collingwood and a trip out west to Frio. Not a good injury for a team at 13th to face.
I mean, in any place, they are so heavily reliant on him. And he's been a great pickup. He's having a great year, but good luck adjusting to life without him. Maybe Jack Steele can really turn it on, but it's going to take a lot of things.
I mean, 14 tackles for Steele suggests he was on for this game. And Hugo Garcia is going to need to step up too. He had his 7, but only 12 disposals.
I mean, I think of Steele, and I've said this before about a couple other guys, like kind of how Josh Dunkley was this week, where his impact, while he's been really good at the sorts, is kind of just nothing going beyond that.
I think this is also the right time to, of course, mention the death of Adam Selwood, because there was so much that the Eagles did to pay tribute to him, along with the other teams of the AFL, particularly Geelong, for whom he also played, and also Collingwood with his brother Scott being one of their assistants. I love that the Eagles, the Cats, and the Pies all managed to win this weekend, and damn it, Brisbane, you could have made it 4 for 4. That's who Troy played for. And to those who say that talking about these tragedies only causes negative effects and potential for like copycat stuff and things like that, because that is discourse that's come out of this. If you're looking at things like the Veriter effect, that has more to do with sensationalized reporting, especially about methods. And I haven't seen anything about that in terms of the discussions around Adam or Troy Selwood or Cam McCarthy. If we mourn their deaths and surround that mourning with discussion of, sharing of mental health and suicide prevention resources, then I think we're doing our job. We're providing a healthy discourse while also celebrating these people that we've lost for who they were and what they accomplished.
And I think that's actually a really good way of summing it up.
I mean, as someone who's had my own mental health struggles, it's disheartening, obviously, and it brings back unfortunate memories of mine. And look, we can't shy away from the conversation. I'm glad that we have things like Spud's Game and that we have Tom Boyd and the think pieces that he's put out. But I also want to see the game do more. The AFL as custodians of the game nationally and worldwide really put a spotlight on mental health resources, both very openly for the public and also in private for their players.
You might be the first person I've ever heard use the term think piece in a positive light.
I think you should take a look at what Tom Boyd has written.
I liked his speech a couple weeks ago, so I assume it's good.
It is, yes. Does think piece really have a negative connotation?
Yes, absolutely.
I know it's weird to transition from that to anything else, but we do need to get on with our awards.
Yeah, and I think this week is a pretty interesting mix. Let's get started with Mark of the Week. Your round 9 winner was Sam Durham, his leg to Jake Lloyd's shoulder. This week, we've got 2 from the same game with Jen Walter over James Sicily and Ben Long over James Sicily's shoulder. And then we've got Buku Kamas with a lead on Zach Reed hanging on Ben Mackay. I don't feel all that strongly about any of these, but I think if I had to pick one, I think I'd go Buku because it really involved 2 defenders.
This is a tough one. You know, Buku, it wasn't really a hang. It was kind of late contact with the leg. I think Walters was on the clean side, whereas Long just managed to actually sit on Sicily. So it's a tough one for me, and I think my vote actually goes to Ben Long, but it's a tight one.
All worthy nominees. I'm not going to be bothered by any of the choices here.
Are you bothered by Harley Reid over Oscar Allen not making it?
Haven't seen enough of it, but that one was cool. There's clearly 4 worthy nominees and only 3 spots. And I don't think any of them are that much better or worse than the others. So that's what makes this tough.
Your round 9 goal of the week was that Isaac Reichen one-time soccer from the showdown. I knew that one was going to win, and it was my pick as well. I forget which one you preferred. Was it Horn Francis?
Yes.
Good crop of goals this week. You had Montbiro Chol with a clean pickup, getting around Sam Collins and kicking out of John Noble's reach. I don't think people think of Chol as that clean a player, but that was smooth. Then you had the highlight reel that is Bobby Hill racing toward the goal line for a soccer after an Isaac Cummings spoil. He beat Wayne Millera to the ball for that one, and considering it was check side too, that was pretty sweet. Lastly, you had Hugo Ralph Smith coming off the pack, breaking Colby McCurcher's tackle, faking Luke McDonald, and kicking that dribbler for the right boundary. I think it's Hugo over Bobby for me, though I love Bobby's.
Gotta be Hugo.
Although, honorable mention again, Bailey J. Williams for guiding the ball down to his boot. Like, remember you said how Toby Nankervis should have won goal of the year a couple years ago? It wasn't quite that crazy, but it was like a nonchalant version of that. I think Eddie Betts managed it too.
And I assume the fact that it was a traditionally clumsy player makes it cooler.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've called him Bumbling Bailey this year.
Behind of the week. Last week, it was Kazi Pickett receiving a hairy, sharp handball. He had a roller in a tight window that ended up missing to the right. This week, I came up with 4 nominees. In chronological order, we've got Sam Flanders receiving a Ben King handball off a turnover. First clearance of the second half. He kicked check side from the right side, but it hit the right post. You have Isaac Heaney crumbing off a pack, not even looking at the goal, only looking down and immediately snapping with his right, but it faded to the right. That one was really cool. Francis Evans kicking a crumb off a pack out of a midair soccer style, kind of just volleyed it. That went to the right as well. Those were all worthy candidates that would win a lot of weeks, but there is an obvious winner this week.
And somehow you forgot it at first.
I'm really tired.
This is probably second place for the entire year right now. That being Pete Ladham's bicycle miss. It wasn't as clean as Jeremy Cameron's, and it also wasn't as close, because it was pretty clearly going to the right the whole time, but also like Pete Laddams with a bicycle.
The least likely guy to do this, maybe in the entire league.
I'd put Bailey J up there.
I'm trying to think of who else would be less likely. Ooh, Riley O'Brien, I would put in that mix too.
Yes. Riley O'Brien definitely up there too. Assist of the week. Your round 9 winner was Lockie Cowan on a cross to the goal square, allowing Will White to run and finish. Some solid ones this week too. You got Brian Myers with one of his messy assists, an Ollie Henry handball and kick across the body to Brad Close. You had Joel Frazier receiving a Tim English handball and getting it to Bailey L. Williams, I want to say, through 3 defenders. And then a backwards soccer from Charlie Cameron to Connor McKenna. Ethan, I know you love Brian, but do you have another winner this week?
I think it might be Frazier, but you could make a case for any of these, honestly. The Cameron one was really cool just because you never see anyone soccer anything away from the goal. And I think a really cool instinctual play.
I think that's why I like Cameron's the best, because it's not something you ever really see. Yeah, I look for the clean. I look for the unique as well. I don't think I've remembered a backwards soccer assist before, so I think my nod goes to Charlie Cameron.
I'm not opposed to that. That is totally fine.
So congrats, Charlie, on your assist of the week.
Worst on round, we may have to leave this up to a vote, and we may add a couple nominees with each of us still needing to watch a couple games.
From the games that I was really in charge of, there wasn't a huge standout candidate to me, but for the games on which Ethan took charge, and I would agree with based on what I've seen, we've got Jesse Motlop, Ollie Lord, and Mason Redmond all in contention. Redmond is the one that's really standing out to me so far.
I mean, Lord was just pretty much invisible, and then, if I didn't mention, Joel Hamley was the winner last week, but I guess nobody from St. Kilda or GWS was that bad in your eyes?
I mean, the sub-offs were sensible.
I mean, the sub-offs are not eligible. You have to play the full game.
Exactly. Like, because of that, like, Mitch Owens, again, had a -1 rating, but also marked well. He just couldn't kick accurately, so maybe Owens is a candidate.
I would make Darcy Ford a candidate, but A, he was a late in, which makes him ineligible, and B, anyone could look bad getting matched up against Max Gone.
Main character. This is a tough one, I think. Our round 9 winner was Willie Rioli because, of course, he wasn't suspended for the threat of Bailey Dale at first. Then more threats were talked about. Then you can't quit, you're fired. Oh, and then you're back this week.
Benjamin, do you have any ideas for main character this week? Because I have one.
I'm kind of stumped. I mean, the memory of Adam Selwood, but that's really... We usually try to go for something living. I mean, we did have a cyclone.
Yeah, we tried to go for something on the oval and ideally more lighthearted and positive, or at least not as grim. Not to say that the Rioli situation was lighthearted, but it was definitely more positive than this.
The Sydney Didgeridoo Players, because there was someone playing the didgeridoo at both the Margaret game and the Giants Frio game.
Oh, I guess, wow, how often do you have a week where both Sydney teams are at home? That's incredibly rare.
I wonder if it was the same person.
Hi, Didgeridoo Player.
But no, I am actually not going with that. I'm going with someone who was one of the most prominent players in maybe the most surprising result of the round and had a goofy moment. That being Jake Melksham, because not only did he kick 4 goals, he also sprayed water on Harris Andrews, and I thought that was funny.
I'm not sure if I saw when that happened.
I wrote it down. Well, first I had seen it through Instagram, and then I saw it when actually watching the game. It was 12 and a half minutes left, goal that cut the lead to 7. Melksham kind of got in Andrew's face after the goal and then sprayed the water on him. It was pretty funny.
And he wasn't penalized, I guess.
Yeah, but that's my pick. That is my main character.
I'll take it. Jake Melksham, congratulations. You are the main character of round 10.
All right, we got to wrap this up. So real quick, don't forget, we're on Twitter at American Spuddy. We're on YouTube. We're on Instagram. I'm on Twitter at Castle Media. He's on Twitter at BenjaminHK01. Ryan Harambe is sitting right next to me. He's been very well behaved. He is on Instagram at @CathNameGryan. Anything else we want to go over?
I don't have any like real smart ending lines for this week, but just glad to be done with my semester and be able to really lock in on this next round of footy. Aside from when I go to a baseball game on Saturday night, and I don't think I'm going to regret that because the Eagles don't usually win in Adelaide.